Welcome back to Michigan's Big Show. I'm Chad Livengood from the Detroit News, filling in for Michael Patrick Shields. We've been talking about road funding and the state of Michigan's highways. The Michigan House of Representatives will start consideration of a road repair funding bill today. Governor Rick Snyder says the situation is so bad that drastic measures keep crumbling concrete from hitting automobiles.
And you travel around the state, look up as you go underneath some of those bridges. If you see plywood, don't feel good.
If you see plywood and you're not to feel good about that. A person who knows a lot about the state of the amount of plywood jammed up underneath our bridges is Kirk Steudle, the director of the Michigan Department of Transportation, who is on the other end of our AT&T line. Welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning, Chad. Thanks for having me on.
How much plywood is there holding up the underside of our bridges right now in Michigan?
You know, when motorists drive under, I don't have an exact number for you. I don't have it off the top of my head. When motorists drive down the road, most people are not thinking about what's above them, and I would want to be careful to not have them to be distracted driving down the road. But you can notice those as you go under the bridges. It's primarily, people think about they're urban bridges. They're in Detroit, or they're in Lansing, they're in Grand Rapids. But frankly, they're all over the state. There's rural areas that have have plywood up there that's catching the concrete coming off the bottom of the bridges. So there's lots of them all over the state.
And these are the 250 some odd structurally deficient bridges across the state.
Yes, yeah, and actually there could be a few more. I mean, structurally deficient refers to a lot of things, and the plywood is holding up, keeping the concrete that's falling from the bottom of the deck off of the traveled roadway. So there's probably more than the 250 serious bridges, because there's other ones where the deck is maybe having a problem, but it's not in a critical situation yet. But we're protecting the road, the drivers that are going underneath and on the road.
The steel and the concrete supports are not deteriorating, but the deck is.
Correct. Yeah. Sometimes there's multiple elements to a bridge, and there's the supports, there's the beams, there's the deck up above, and then there's a bunch of other little pieces, and we rate them individually. So something can become structurally deficient if one of those items happens to be out, and then so the bridge deck could be bad, could be just some spalling that happens on the bottom of it, and that's largely due to age and deterioration. It's steel that's in it that is rusting, and there isn't any steel around or any concrete with steel in it that isn't susceptible to that.
The bridge I think about often with plywood on its underside is the University Drive overpass over I-75 in Auburn Hills.
Yeah, that was terrible.
The gateway to Oakland University and the Chrysler Corporation headquarters. A pretty well traversed road there and bridge, and that one is now slated for replacement next year, right?
It is actually. You may remember January of last year we had to close it. We closed it for about a week.
Yep.
Because as the bridge inspectors were up there, they saw cracks in the beams that were not there 6 months earlier, and that's how things change. People think you just build something, it's just there forever. Well, weather and use really take its toll on something that sits outside all the time, and that's in University Bridge. If you drive through there, you can see what we call temporary supports in the median, where there's steel supports in the middle of the grassed area holding up the bridge. That's what's holding it in place, because the beams over the pier itself have deteriorated so much that it won't hold the load anymore. In fact, we're going to be putting temporary supports on a couple of bridges on I-96 starting today over by Lansing. One at Zimmer Road, they're going to be in the median, putting temporary supports under that as well. Because
it's got similar problems?
Yes.
Interesting. Yep. Okay.
There's a whole bunch of them on that section over by Okemos that we're going to be putting temporary supports under. A bunch of them. They're all built about the same time, and they all have the same type of failure going on.
Yeah, and that bridge in Auburn Hills is more than 50 years old, so it seems like it's pretty overdue for replacement.
Yeah, it is really. And yesterday the governor and I were out on the Lodge Freeway, and we were looking at a piece of the wall that had moved. It was down between McNichols and Myers, and it's about 300 feet long, and the wall had moved towards and tipping towards the freeway itself. So if you're down on the freeway, you don't even know it. But up above, we've got half of the service drive gone, and we took all the dirt from behind it to relieve that pressure, so it stopped leaning towards the freeway.
So if the legislature approves this additional $1 billion to $1.5 billion in new revenue, how quickly is the industry and MDOT and the road commissions, are they going to be able to really get out there and get after some of these nagging issues without tying up the entire state in orange barrels?
Well, I think the first of all, the short answer to your question is yes. We've got some projects that are on the shelf, but frankly, I think a lot of what you're going to see is some of the road repairs or the designs are going to change. They're going to go from a shorter-term repair to a longer-term repair. Let me give you an example. Instead of doing, a one course, like a 2 inches asphalt on top of a road that just kind of hold it together, it's more likely that will be changed to probably a 4-inch one that will provide us longer years of life. And that depends. The life depends directly on how much traffic is above it. If you do one of those in Metro Detroit, you can expect to get about 8 years of life out of it. If you do that same thing in northern Michigan or the Thumb or the UP, you can probably expect 12 to 14 years of life out of it. And that's just how many cars are driving over it every day.
Sure.
So we'll ramp up those designs, change some of those designs, that are already in process, and then do some more design build, which puts the designer and the contractor closer together, and we can push those out faster.